We're talking some fantasy football lineup advice here for week 4 NFL action. In this particular video, I'll be covering 5 wide receivers that I have as must-start options here. Again, for week 4 games. As always, you're more than encouraged to drop your lineup questions and tough decisions for your teams this week down in the comment section below. I will do my best to get back to as many of you as possible. So keep those firing throughout the day, throughout the week. Whenever I can, I'll sit down, take a swing, and crank out as many of those responses as I can. And of course, as I see them pop up in my inbox throughout the week, I'm continuing to answer stuff there as well. So I appreciate you guys. Help out a friend as well. If you see a question you think you have a good answer for, let them have it. I think that you guys, of course, as a community can be really interactive and a tool and resource for one another as well. So thank you guys so much for all you guys do. Let's hop into the video. All right, here we go. So before I dive into the man, the myth, the legend himself, DK, DeKale, and Metcalf, I got to talk through our week 3 picks, where I was right, where I was wrong, and of course, just kind of give you a quick synopsis and breakdown of that before we get into this week's picks. We went 3 of 5, so again, of course, we're happy to be over 50%. Always trying to go 5 for 5 for you guys, but I try to pick some names kind of on the cusp, on the fringe of your lineups that might be some dire situational needs to be played here. So where we went right, Adam Thielen had himself a season-high contest against the Detroit Lions. Allen Lazard found the end zone against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, put up a good enough game there. Curtis Samuel, once again, a high-volume slot receiver for the Washington offense. And our 2 misses this week were Brandon Cooks and Allen Robinson. Brandon Cooks just couldn't convert on his 7 targets this past week. And then Allen Robinson, of course, has lost my trust here once again. And I actually will be talking about that in another video this week. So stay tuned for that. I've got a deep dive on Allen Robinson and that Rams offense coming here. So thought we could trust him after an impressive week 2 performance, week 3 showing us otherwise. Into DK Metcalf now, taking on the Detroit Lions. I've actually gotten him at the moment in my top 24 for this week's games. We'll see where he lands on the tiers list. That'll be coming out tomorrow. I'll be revising this information, but nonetheless, I think he's a very viable lineup starter here as a guy that is definitely no longer a weekly must-start player in lineups every single week of the season. What we've seen is kind of erratic inconsistency. We don't necessarily know on a weekly basis what we're going to be getting from Geno Smith and how reliable DK's fantasy value or his teammate Tyler Lockett, who I might also consider a decent flex option this week. We don't really know what we're getting from them in a week-in, week-out basis. Now, Tyler Lockett has actually seen some higher target volume here throughout portions of this season. So, again, I like him in spots this week as well, but DK being the better talent, a guy I feel more comfortable with scoring touchdowns, I think has a really great opportunity to put up another top 24 week this year, or in this week's matchup here against the Lions. So hit a season-high 12 targets in week 3 against the Atlanta Falcons. He only had 64 yards, though, on 5 receptions, so under a 50% catch rate, which is kind of poor if I'm being honest. Being below 50% is very underwhelming, but he did score a touchdown on a big 50-50 ball on a jump pass from Geno Smith. So we like to see that. That's encouraging. This week against the defense and the Detroit Lions, it has had opportunities for other receivers to put up some pretty big games here, especially with DK Metcalf's physicality as a player. I like the opportunity here. Of course, he'll be somewhat boom bust as always, but if he gets between 8 and 10 targets, I think he's got a good enough opportunity to hopefully get that yards per catch number up, maybe score another touchdown this week. We actually saw DK crush this team last season at the end of the year in the fantasy playoffs, so hoping for the best here for DK this week. Chris Olave against the Minnesota Vikings, another player I love starting here. Chris Olave is someone that I'm beginning to become more and more confident on. I believe he's broken out as an emerging fantasy star here with back-to-back 13 target games. Now, this is an odd matchup. This is an interesting situation for New Orleans here that's playing a primetime game, in a sense, very, very early on Sunday morning in London against the Minnesota Vikings. So what I love about this matchup, besides the target opportunity the last 2 games for Olave, and we'll talk about that more in depth in just a second here, is that the weakness of this Vikings secondary and defensive unit as a whole is the perimeter cornerback play. I think Chris Olave fits in here perfectly with how we've seen Jameis Winston air out the football the last couple of weeks. Chris Olave is the #1 player in air yards right now in the NFL. So a lot of stuff to like. What I do really like about Chris Olave as well is that a lot of people are kind of bashing on him for, those 13 targets only happened because, if you didn't know this, Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry ended up exiting the game on Sunday against the Panthers with various injuries. However, in the week prior to that, they were both there for the first 13 target games. So I think Olave may just be establishing himself here as Jameis Winston's favorite passing target this year. I think that we kind of talked about this throughout the summer. I think Olave's skill set with Jameis is the best fit and pair for this team offensively. We'll see if they can start connecting more consistently on those deeper passes, though, and hopefully find some end zone trips as well. Devonta Smith taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars here. Another matchup where you've got yourself, I would say Devonta Smith is the number 2 wide receiver for this Eagles offense. I think AJB is the clear alpha for this team. But Devonta, after having a goose egg in week 1, has really dominated here the last 2 weeks. He's actually went 19 targets since week 2 for 249 yards, averaging over $120 per game, and 1 receiving touchdown. So basically, if you didn't watch the tape from last game against the Commanders, cut it on. He was making jump balls left and right. The Slim Reaper was popping up in the end zone on deep post patterns over the middle of the field. He was just bully balling guys that are much larger than him. It was actually kind of funny to see this really skinny guy and just this kind of undersized player in terms of the guys we typically associate with these big jump balls downfield, going out there and dominating that phase of the game. And he was spectacular, had an awesome touchdown reception in the left corner of the end zone. He's doing it all right now. We saw him rack up 12 targets this week, 7 the week prior. He's been very productive with those opportunities as well. This offense is humming right now. Their kind of intermediate RPO game has just been destroying teams. Now in week 2 against the Vikings, they got countless illegal man downfield penalties, but I'm sure they'll clean that stuff up here continually and ultimately continue putting out a better offensive product here. But the offensive product has been pretty dang good to start off with. They're producing 3 fantasy-relevant pass catchers each week. Now, there's going to be weeks where guys miss. Dallas Goedert, though, the last couple of weeks has been very solid, in addition to A.J. Brown being the alpha here, and Devonta Smith actually being the highest scoring producer the last couple of weeks, just totally dominating that second-tier coverage, which he'll get again here, of course, against the Jags in week 3. So I think as a flex option, maybe if you're really weak at receiver and you need a wide receiver 2 here, Smith can be a viable play there. I think it's hard to sit him after what he's done the last couple of weeks. Let me know if you've got questions or alternate options to head to in your lineups for this week's games. Amari Cooper against the Atlanta Falcons here on the road at Atlanta is the matchup for Cooper and the Browns this week. We had a pretty big takeaway from last week's action against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that was in games where Amari Cooper does not play a top-tier defensive pass rush, meaning Jacoby Brissett sitting behind one of the best O-lines in football, is untouched. His jersey comes out clean at the end of the day, and he's unhurried in the pocket. He can deliver on time and on target, unpressured, and really just have a calm game back there. Amari Cooper's going to thrive. He's going to go out there, run his routes. He's a very good perimeter wide receiver, and he's going to make big plays. And we've seen him get 21 targets the last 2 weeks for 202 yards and 2 touchdowns. This week against the Falcons, the 24th ranked pass rush in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback. These aren't sack numbers. These are quarterback pressures. Brissett's going to be sitting back there pretty all day long without too much, rushed attempts to throw the football. So I think Amari Cooper comes out as another top 24 play with a big ceiling. We'll see if these target numbers continue here. Maybe they dip down just a little bit, but really liking that opportunity for him here in this game. And then finally, Garrett Wilson. Maybe I'm rolling the dice here. Maybe some of you are uncomfortable with this. I'm going to lay out the reason, of course, the elephant in the room that this may not work out, so I'll be upfront about that. But I still think that this is a play that I want to make here. For some of you in some dire, maybe your wide receiver core is a little thinned out this week. Maybe you're really looking for some help and some upside. I still very much so think Garrett Wilson brings that to the table here in week 4, despite maybe not having as good of a floor as he's had the last couple games here. But we didn't really know about that floor until really truly watching and seeing what Joe Flacco provided for this offense. But that elephant in the room is Zach Wilson. It sounds like he's going to play here. It sounds like Joe Flacco will be getting put back to the bench. And it sounds like Garrett Wilson will have a changing dynamic at the quarterback position. Now, why am I not super concerned about this? I think that throughout camp, throughout the preseason, and throughout these first 3 games, Garrett Wilson's done enough to establish himself as the alpha wide receiver 1 for this team. Elijah Moore is a very good player, but if we look through those top 3 games here, or these first 3 games, it's been 32 targets to Garrett Wilson to 22 for Elijah Moore, who had 10 this past week, so 12 total through the first 2 games. I think that Wilson has got this job locked up. I think the Jets offensive coaching staff wants to feed him the football, and I think that's going to be a priority for this offense going forward. The other reason that I'm not as concerned about this is, first and foremost, I think the running backs are the players that take the biggest hit here, if anyone, in this passing offense transition to Zach Wilson. I think you might see less checkdowns, more passes in the intermediate phase of the game to those running backs, your Michael Carters, your Breece Halls of the world, who Breece Hall has been on a tear with his target volume lately, with Joe Flacco, a seasoned veteran quarterback, looking to get that ball out of his hands on time. But if anything, you're going to see Zach Wilson push the ball downfield more. You're going to see more vertical opportunities for Garrett Wilson, a very solid route runner, someone who can win in the contested catching game as well, and has elite body control, a phenomenal route runner. I think he continues to get a high amount of looks here. I'm very interested in this Jets-Pittsburgh offense this week, or matchup here. And then you've got the dynamic with no TJ Watt. So it's not like Zach's going to be welcomed back here to an elite pass rush, a team right on his back, and coming after him all afternoon long. So I'm not too panicked or worried at all about this matchup. Again, I do think Garrett Wilson is a strong flex play again here. And this Pittsburgh secondary is yardage to be had. They will let you have big plays. We saw Cooper eat him up last week. Now, this Jets O-line is nothing like what the Browns offensive line brought to the table on Thursday night. And yes, the Pittsburgh Steelers do have a long week of preparation here, but I'm still confident in the talent prevailing here and Garrett Wilson giving us those looks and numbers to at least get you a respectable floor out of this matchup here in Week 4. So Garrett Wilson, to recap, Amari Cooper, Devonta Smith, Chris Olave, and DK Metcalf are our 5 must-start receivers here on the fringe of being, lineup-worthy plays. If you enjoyed, smash the like button, click the subscribe button as well. I appreciate your guys' time for sticking around with me. And again, please put your questions in the comment section below. They're all welcome here, and I want to help you guys out. So thanks so much. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.